My husband tried to bully me at my high school reunion, so I got revenge in the most wholesome way possible. I always thought women were doomed to love more than men, until I met Blake. Me and Blake had been together for 4 years. He was every woman's dream guy. He kept his place super clean, never let me cook without doing the dishes for me, and even memorized my period cycle so he knew when to buy me flowers and chocolate. But he always tried to make things a competition. Like the day I got my college degree, he signed up for dozens of prestigious internships. At the time, I thought it could be a good thing. I figured it just meant we always pushed each other to be better. Funny. Anyways, a few months ago, I got an invite to my high school reunion. Picture the geeky girl in the before of glow-ups in Disney movies. Because up until the day I graduated, that was me. But now I had a life I was proud of, and, in all honesty, ready to flaunt. I told Blake as soon as he got home. I remember wanting to trash talk the girls at school together, about how we'd make everyone rot with jealousy. Honey, I don't think you have much to show off. I mean, it's not like you've really changed much. For a second, I swear I thought he was pranking me. I reminded him that, for one, I don't have braces and big glasses anymore. I've lost over 80 pounds since then. I think he realized he messed up, because he immediately began backpedaling and saying that he just had a long day, that he'd be more than happy to go with me. Well, I myself was extremely exhausted, so I just accepted his apology and marked the date for the reunion. I bought myself the most flattering and expensive dress I could find. My shoes, purse, necklace, and earrings were all perfectly coordinated, and when the day came, I smiled at myself in the mirror, knowing I had come a long way. I expected a, "You look nice," from Blake, or even something about the color of my dress would have been nice. But instead, he asked me if I could wear less accessories so I don't show him up. I told him no, and he just rolled his eyes. Next thing I knew, he was grabbing these cufflinks from a Cartier box and switching his watch for a Rolex, both of which I had never seen before. Then, he just left. Well, I figured he had just gone for a smoke, and I finished getting ready. For the first time ever, I understood what it means to feel like a princess, until I went outside, because Blake was nowhere to be found. I tried texting and calling him for 30 minutes straight, but there was no response. I don't even know what I was thinking at this point, but either way, I ended up ordering an Uber, because by then, I wasn't even worried about Blake. I was thinking about Cherry, my main bully, the girl who made up a song about me. If we got stuck on an island, no food in sight, we'd roast up Lily. We'd eat every bite. She's a pig so big it's almost a crime, feeding the school one snack at a time. The familiar rage I felt all throughout my teenage years boiled my blood, and I walked into that building filled with anger. But when I walked in, the first person I saw wasn't Cherry. It was Blake. I caught him halfway through a conversation about how well he was doing and how much he's changed since high school. And even when he saw me, he kept the conversation with them going. He only stopped when the woman walked away. I immediately asked him what the F he was doing, that it was my high school reunion, not his. When I looked into his eyes, for the first time, I saw more than just jealousy. It was hatred. Fear ran through my veins, and I reminded him that I loved him, that we were here to be together. He completely ignored what I said, and looked for someone else to talk to. That's when my body froze, because he had made direct eye contact with Cherry, who was practically running towards us. They started talking, and she twirled her hair, completely ignoring me. Then, after I stood there in complete disbelief and silence for 5 minutes, she finally turned to me and asked who I was. Despite everything, I was hyped. This is the moment every bullied kid dreams of. The moment their bully doesn't recognize them. And it's clear they're hotter and richer than them now. But before I could say anything, my husband chimed in. "Damn, you don't even recognize her. This is Lily. Remember the girl from the song?" My heart dropped. I saw a glimmer of intense jealousy in Cherry's eyes, before she started cackling. For a moment, I was glad no one else was listening to this train wreck. But that's when my husband started clicking his fingers, tapping his foot, and humming to the tune of the song. I wanted to crawl into a ball. Soon, everyone turned to look at me and I heard whispers. My eyes locked with Blake's. And even as mine were filled with tears, his were filled with joy. By instinct, I wrapped my arms around him. I just wanted to disappear. But he didn't even touch me. He just kept singing the song and told me to stop taking life so seriously. So, I did what I always do. I just smiled and pretended to be completely fine. I told Blake he was right, because I knew there was only one way to win. Only one force in my favor. And that was the power of underestimation. I took a deep breath and composed myself, remembering all those years of being underestimated by everyone, including Blake. My fake smile must have thrown him off because his singing faltered for a moment, and I used that split second to slip away from him towards the bar. I ordered the strongest cocktail they had, downed it in 3 gulps, and scanned the room with new determination. Cherry and Blake were still laughing together, completely ignoring me, which gave me the perfect opportunity to regroup and strategize. I spotted Madison, one of the few people who had been decent to me in high school, and made my way over to her, making sure my walk exuded confidence despite feeling like I was crumbling inside. Madison's eyes lit up when she recognized me, giving me a warm hug that felt like a lifeline in this sea of cruel memories. We caught up quickly, and I discovered she was now a successful marketing executive at a major firm in the city, which gave me an idea. I casually mentioned my own career successes while we chatted, making sure my voice carried just enough for those nearby to hear, including a group of former cheerleaders who had joined Cherry's bullying campaign. Their heads turned, and I noticed several of them whispering as they gave me second glances, clearly reassessing who I had become. Blake was still by the punch bowl with Cherry, but I caught him glancing over at me repeatedly, confusion evident on his face as he saw me socializing confidently. I laughed extra loudly at Madison's jokes, touching her arm occasionally in that way people do when they're having a genuinely good time, and soon our little circle grew as more former classmates approached, curious about the glamorous woman I'd become. Trent, our former class president who'd gone on to become a doctor, joined our conversation and seemed particularly interested in my career path, asking thoughtful questions that allowed me to showcase my accomplishments without seeming boastful. I could feel Blake's eyes boring into my back, but I refused to acknowledge him, instead focusing on reconnecting with people and gradually shifting the power dynamic in the room. Someone suggested taking pictures, and I graciously positioned myself in the center of the group, making sure my expensive dress and jewelry were on full display as flashes went off and people tagged me in social media posts. My former chemistry partner Jake, now a venture capitalist, asked for my business card, mentioning a project that aligned perfectly with my expertise, and I handed it over with practiced ease, aware that several others were watching this exchange with newfound respect. The night was gaining momentum in my favor when the DJ announced it was time for the Remember When slideshow, and we all moved toward the main screen. Cherry had somehow managed to include multiple unflattering photos of me from high school, and I felt my stomach clench when my braces-filled, overweight teenage self appeared on screen to scattered giggles. Blake laughed the loudest, throwing his head back and pointing at the screen while looking around to make sure others were joining in. Instead of shrinking away, I took another approach. I laughed along with them, even adding a few self-deprecating comments about my fashion choices back then that turned the atmosphere from mockery to camaraderie. God, that butterfly clip phase was tragic for all of us, wasn't it? I quipped, earning genuine laughter and nods of agreement from many who had gone through similar awkward phases. The slideshow continued, and I maintained my composure, occasionally catching Blake's confused glances as his attempt to humiliate me backfired. When the formal part of the evening concluded and people began mingling again, I found myself surrounded by a small group of genuinely interested former classmates, including Ryan, who had been quarterback and was now divorced with 2 kids. He seemed particularly attentive, refilling my drink and standing slightly closer than necessary as we talked. I wasn't interested in Ryan romantically, but I allowed the interaction to continue, knowing full well that Blake was watching from across the room, his jaw tightening each time Ryan made me laugh. Cherry had apparently grown bored of Blake once she realized he wasn't getting the reaction from me that she'd hoped for, and she'd moved on to fawning over someone else, leaving Blake awkwardly alone by the dessert table. My confidence growing by the minute, I excused myself from Ryan and made my way to the ladies' room, deliberately walking past Blake without acknowledging him. In the bathroom, I reapplied my lipstick and adjusted my dress, giving myself a quick pep talk in the mirror when the door swung open and Cherry walked in with 2 of her friends. Their conversation halted abruptly when they saw me, but instead of leaving, I smiled warmly at them and complimented Cherry's dress, watching confusion flash across her face at my unexpected kindness. We ended up having a surprisingly civil conversation about our lives since high school, and I maintained my friendly demeanor even as Cherry attempted to slip in backhanded compliments about how brave I was to wear such a form-fitting dress. I responded by thanking her sincerely and mentioning the extensive volunteer work I'd been doing with teen girls struggling with body image issues, watching her face fall as her attempts to undermine me continued to fail. When we returned to the main room, Blake intercepted me immediately, grabbing my arm with more force than necessary and hissing that it was time to go. I calmly removed his hand from my arm and told him I was enjoying catching up with old friends, suggesting he could leave if he was tired. His face reddened with anger and embarrassment as several people nearby pretended not to listen to our exchange, and I walked away to join a group that included the former editor of our school newspaper, who was now working for a major publication. The rest of the evening continued in this pattern, Blake trying to reassert control, me calmly but firmly maintaining my independence, and the power balance between us shifting visibly with each interaction. By the time the reunion was winding down, I had exchanged contact information with several people who seemed genuinely interested in maintaining a friendship, received 2 potential business opportunities, and even been invited to speak at a career day at our old high school by the current principal who was in attendance. Blake, meanwhile, had grown increasingly agitated and isolated as his attempts to embarrass me fell flat, and people gradually stopped engaging with him once they sensed the tension between us. When we finally left, Blake stormed ahead to the parking lot, assuming I would follow like I always did, but I deliberately lingered to say proper goodbyes and exchange final hugs with my new reconnections. I found Blake leaning against a random car, pretending it was ours since he'd taken an Uber like me, his earlier bravado completely deflated. The ride home was silent, thick with tension as Blake stared out the window, occasionally shooting me venomous glances that I pretended not to notice. When we arrived home, his facade cracked completely, and he launched into a tirade about how I had embarrassed him by flirting with other men and ignoring him at our reunion. I listened quietly, letting him rant himself into exhaustion before calmly pointing out that it was my reunion, not his, and that his behavior had been deliberately cruel. The argument escalated, with Blake bringing up old insecurities and attempting to regain control through familiar patterns of criticism and gaslighting. But something had fundamentally changed. I could see his techniques clearly now, recognizing them for the manipulations they were, and they no longer had the power to wound me the way they once did. I slept in the guest room that night, locking the door behind me and falling into a surprisingly peaceful sleep, waking the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Blake was already in the kitchen when I emerged, acting as if nothing had happened, making my favorite breakfast and commenting on how overall fun the reunion had been. I accepted the peace offering on the surface, but began quietly observing our relationship with new eyes in the days that followed. The patterns became glaringly obvious once I knew to look for them. Blake's need to one-up me, the subtle put-downs disguised as jokes, the way he managed to make every accomplishment of mine somehow about him. I started testing small boundaries, declining to watch his favorite shows some evenings to read instead, or making career decisions without seeking his approval first. Each tiny act of independence was met with escalating tactics, guilt trips, cold shoulders, even occasional fits of rage followed by elaborate apologies and temporary improvements. 2 weeks after the reunion, I received a call from Jake, my former chemistry partner, about the business opportunity he'd mentioned. It involved consulting on a major project that aligned perfectly with my expertise, offering substantially more money than my current position, and the potential for significant career advancement. When I told Blake about it that evening, his reaction was predictable. Initial congratulations followed quickly by concerns about the time commitment, subtle digs about whether I was qualified, and finally, the bombshell that he had just been offered a promotion that would require us to relocate to another state. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental, and I recognized it for what it was, a power play designed to force me to choose between my opportunity and his. Instead of immediately capitulating as I might have done in the past, I suggested we consider how both opportunities might work, perhaps with some remote arrangements. Watching his face darken as he realized I wasn't automatically prioritizing his career over mine. The argument that followed was one of our worst, with Blake eventually storming out and not returning until the early hours of the morning, reeking of alcohol and mumbling apologies. I pretended to be asleep, my mind racing with plans and realizations that had been forming since the reunion. The next morning, while Blake was still sleeping off his hangover, I made some phone calls and sent some emails, then went for a long walk to clear my head and strategize my next moves. By the time I returned, Blake was in full damage control mode. He'd cleaned the entire apartment, ordered my favorite takeout, and was being overly solicitous about my feelings regarding our decision about the job opportunities. I played along, allowing him to think he was reestablishing control while secretly setting my plans in motion. Over the next few days, I began subtly removing important documents from our shared storage, securing my own bank account, and reaching out to friends I'd lost touch with during our relationship, reconnecting in ways that wouldn't alert Blake to my intentions. I took the consulting job without discussing it further with Blake, simply informing him of my decision as a fait accompli, and watching him struggle to maintain his supportive facade while seething underneath. The tension in our apartment grew palpable as Blake realized his usual tactics weren't working, and he alternated between being unusually attentive and affectionate and having unpredictable outbursts of anger over minor issues. I maintained my calm exterior, no longer engaging in the circular arguments that had once left me emotionally drained and apologizing for things that weren't my fault. 3 weeks after accepting the new position, I received my first substantial payment and immediately used part of it to secure a small apartment across town, signing the lease during my lunch break and arranging for movers when I knew Blake would be at an all-day work conference. The morning of my planned departure, Blake was unusually tender, mentioning how proud he was of me and suggesting we plan a vacation to celebrate both our new jobs. I nodded and smiled, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and liberation as I watched him leave for work, knowing it was the last time I would see him as my partner. Once he was gone, I moved with methodical efficiency, the movers arriving exactly on schedule to transport the items I had carefully inventoried as truly mine. I left behind anything we had purchased together, including the expensive furniture he had insisted on buying to impress his colleagues when they visited. My only indulgence was taking the dress I had worn to the reunion, a symbolic reclaiming of the power I had found that night. When everything was loaded, I left a simple note on the kitchen counter explaining that I was leaving and would contact him through my lawyer regarding the dissolution of our shared assets and lease obligations. I included the name of a therapist who specialized in narcissistic personality issues, a final gesture that was both sincere and, I knew, likely to enrage him when he realized I had psychoanalyzed his behavior. As expected, Blake's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of calls, texts alternating between rage and pleading, even showing up at my workplace the following day, forcing security to escort him from the building. I maintained no contact except through my lawyer, who reported that Blake was oscillating between threats of legal action and offers to attend couples counseling. My new apartment became my sanctuary, decorated only with things that brought me joy, rather than items chosen to impress others or meet Blake's exacting standards. I reconnected with friends who had gradually drifted away during my relationship, shocked to realize how isolated I had become without noticing. Madison from the reunion became a regular visitor, her straightforward nature and genuine support helping me process the complex emotions of ending a long-term relationship, even one as toxic as mine had been. The healing wasn't linear. I had days where I questioned my decision, moments where I missed the good parts of Blake, and nights where I woke up panicking about starting over at 32. But gradually, these moments became less frequent as I established new routines and rediscovered parts of myself that had been suppressed during our relationship. 6 months after leaving Blake, I attended a conference related to my new position and ran into Cherry, of all people, who was representing her company at the same event. Our interaction was surreally civil, with Cherry asking about Blake and seeming genuinely surprised when I informed her we were no longer together. We ended up having coffee during a break between sessions, and she confessed that Blake had actually reached out to her through social media shortly after the reunion, sharing details about our relationship that should have remained private and asking her pointed questions about my behavior in high school. Her description of their conversations confirmed what I had suspected. Blake had deliberately researched my past insecurities to use against me, even going so far as to contact my former bully for ammunition. Cherry seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation, admitting that while she had enjoyed the attention initially, Blake's obsession with undermining me had eventually struck her as disturbing. We parted on surprisingly amicable terms, both of us having grown beyond the people we had been in high school, though for very different reasons. A year after leaving Blake, I received a final communication from him through my lawyer, a settlement agreement for the remaining joint property, and a brief formal note acknowledging the end of our relationship. There was no apology, no real insight, just a business-like conclusion to 4 years of my life. I signed the papers without hesitation, feeling a weight lift as I legally severed the last ties between us. Through mutual friends, I occasionally heard updates about Blake's life. He had indeed taken the job in another state, was dating someone new within months of our breakup, and was still the outwardly perfect partner who did the dishes and remembered important dates. I felt a twinge of sympathy for his new girlfriend, wondering if she would recognize the patterns sooner than I had, or if she too would spend years believing that competitive love was better than no love at all. My own life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. The consulting project led to a leadership position with the company, I bought my first home on my own, and I even started dating again, cautiously at first, then with increasing confidence as I learned to recognize and avoid the red flags I had once ignored. The most surprising development came 2 years after leaving Blake, when I was asked to speak at a women's leadership conference about professional reinvention. Standing at the podium, looking out at the audience of attentive faces, I realized how far I had come from that night at the reunion, when I had pretended to be fine while falling apart inside. My talk was well received, leading to more speaking engagements, and eventually a book deal for a memoir about recognizing and escaping competitive relationships. The day my book was published, I received a package at my office. Inside was a copy of my high school yearbook with a note from Madison expressing how proud she was of my journey. Flipping through the pages, I found my awkward senior photo, complete with braces and forced smile, and felt no embarrassment or shame, only compassion for the girl who had not yet learned her worth. The final vindication came 3 years after leaving Blake, when I was invited back to speak at another high school reunion, this time as a distinguished alumna who had achieved notable success. I accepted the invitation with genuine pleasure, no longer needing to prove anything to anyone but curious to see what another 5 years had brought to my former classmates. The night of this reunion was entirely different. I arrived alone but never felt lonely, greeting old acquaintances with authentic interest and sharing stories without the constant internal calculation of how I measured up. Cherry was there again, noticeably subdued compared to last time, and she approached me early in the evening to awkwardly compliment my book, admitting she had read it and recognized some of her own behavior patterns in the sections about bullying. We didn't become friends exactly, but we reached a kind of peace that my teenage self would never have thought possible. Blake didn't attend this reunion, having no real connection to this school beyond his temporary attempt to co-opt my past. His absence felt right somehow, a confirmation that I had successfully disentangled my story from his. As the evening wound down and I prepared to leave, Madison linked her arm through mine and remarked how different I seemed from the woman who had arrived at the last reunion, not just in confidence but in fundamental happiness. I smiled, acknowledging the truth in her observation, and feeling grateful for the painful but necessary journey that had brought me to this point. Walking to my car alone, I looked up at the clear night sky and thought about the strange circular nature of growing up, how sometimes we have to revisit our oldest wounds to finally heal them properly. My phone buzzed with a text from the person I had recently started seeing more seriously, checking if I'd had a good time and asking if I wanted company later. I texted back a simple yes, no longer afraid of genuine connection or worried about maintaining a perfect facade. The power of underestimation had indeed been my salvation. Blake had underestimated my strength, Cherry had underestimated my resilience, but most importantly, I had underestimated myself for far too long, and finally recognizing my own worth had been the key to breaking free from the patterns that had defined my past. I spent that evening cleaning my apartment with renewed purpose. The surfaces gleamed under fresh polish. My playlist thumped through speakers I hadn't used in months. I threw away old takeout containers from the fridge. The trash bag filled quickly with reminders of my isolation. I opened windows to let fresh air replace the stale memories. My phone buzzed with another text from Cherry. She wanted to bring wine at 8. I smiled at the simplicity of normal friendship. The doorbell rang exactly at 8 o'clock. Cherry stood there with 2 bottles and a genuine smile. We drank and talked until midnight about nothing important. She never once mentioned Blake or the drama. I appreciated her respect for my boundaries. We made plans to try a new restaurant that weekend. After she left, I slept better than I had in years. My alarm woke me for work the next morning. I didn't hit snooze even once. The office felt different somehow when I walked in. People nodded hello as I passed their desks. I tackled my inbox with efficiency I'd forgotten I possessed. My boss noticed the change immediately. She handed me a new project before lunch. I accepted the challenge without my usual hesitation. The work energized rather than drained me. I stayed late finishing reports nobody expected until next week. My phone remained silent the entire day, and Blake hadn't tried to contact me again. His absence felt like freedom rather than abandonment. I treated myself to dinner at my favorite cafe. The waitress remembered my usual order. I left her an extra large tip just because I could. The walk home took me past Blake's favorite bar. I didn't even slow down as I passed it. The next few weeks established my new normal. I joined a weekend hiking group. My legs burned climbing trails I once would have avoided. The fresh air filled my lungs with possibilities. I reconnected with college friends I'd neglected during Blake's reign. We laughed about old times over brunch. Nobody asked about my absence or my return. They simply welcomed me back to the table. I downloaded dating apps but didn't rush to use them. My profile remained blank but ready for when I felt prepared. Cherry introduced me to her wider circle of friends. They welcomed me without questions or judgment. We became regular fixtures at local trivia nights. Our team never won but always had the most fun. My apartment transformed with small but meaningful changes. I replaced the sofa Blake had chosen with one I actually liked. The walls received fresh paint and colors that made me happy. I hung artwork that spoke to me rather than matched the decor. My sister visited from out of state for a weekend. She noticed the changes in me before mentioning the apartment. We stayed up talking about our childhood and future dreams. She hugged me extra tight before leaving for the airport. Work continued to improve with my new attitude. My boss offered me a promotion I hadn't sought. The raise meant financial independence I'd never fully achieved. My colleagues took me out to celebrate my success. Rain fell for a week straight that November. I didn't mind the gray skies or wet shoes. The weather matched my reflective mood perfectly. I started journaling each night before bed. The pages filled with observations observations rather than complaints. I found patterns in my thinking I'd never noticed before. The holidays approached with their usual commercial assault. I bought thoughtful gifts rather than expensive ones. My family seemed surprised by my attentiveness that year. We gathered at my parents' house without the usual tension. Blake texted on Christmas Eve after months of silence. I read his message but felt nothing but mild curiosity. His words seeking reconciliation seemed hollow and self-serving. I deleted the text without responding and never regretted it. New Year's Eve arrived with actual excitement for me. Cherry hosted a party at her renovated warehouse apartment. I wore a dress I'd bought just for myself. The compliments I received felt genuine and deserved. Midnight struck and I kissed a stranger's cheek. He asked for my number without presumption or pressure. I gave it to him without overthinking the gesture. His name was Marcus, and he restored my faith in first dates. We met for coffee the following weekend. The conversation flowed without awkward pauses or forced topics. He listened when I spoke about my interests. I found myself genuinely curious about his life too. We dated casually throughout that winter. He never pushed for more than I offered. We enjoyed simple pleasures like bookstore browsing and coffee shops. Our physical relationship developed at a pace that felt right. Spring arrived with its metaphorical new beginnings. I planted a small container garden on my balcony. The seedlings required daily attention and care, and their growth mirrored my own steady progress. Marcus and I continued seeing each other without labels. We both had personal goals that took priority. He understood my need for independence. I appreciated his respect for boundaries I'd learned to establish. Cherry got engaged to her longtime girlfriend that April. The celebration dinner became an emotional milestone for me. I gave a toast that made everyone at the table cry. My happiness for her was completely untainted by envy. My promotion led to a conference presentation in Chicago. I prepared my materials with confidence and excitement. The audience responded positively to my ideas. Colleagues from other companies offered their business cards. I extended my trip by 2 days for sightseeing. The city energized me with its architecture and pace. I visited museums and took architectural boat tours. The solo travel empowered rather than intimidated me. Marcus met me at the airport upon my return. His welcome felt warm without being possessive. We spent the night talking about my experiences. He shared his own news about a potential job change. Summer brought weekend trips to nearby beaches. My skin tanned from hours reading books in the sun. I tried paddleboarding for the first time. The balance required became another metaphor for my life. Cherry's wedding planning consumed our friend group, and I helped address invitations and choose centerpieces. The bridesmaid dress actually looked good on everyone. I felt genuine excitement rather than obligation about the event. My parents celebrated their 40th anniversary that July. The party I helped organize honored their specific wishes. My father hugged me longer than usual afterward. My mother commented on my apparent happiness with approval. Work continued to challenge and reward me. I mentored new staff with patience I'd developed for myself. My ideas received consideration from senior management. I no longer feared speaking up in important meetings. Marcus introduced me to his parents over Labor Day weekend. Their warmth reminded me of my own family. We grilled in their backyard and played card games. I felt comfortable rather than anxious the entire visit. Fall brought changes to our relationship dynamic. Marcus accepted a job opportunity in another state. We discussed options with honesty and care, and the decision to try long distance came naturally. Cherry's October wedding arrived with perfect weather. I stood beside her feeling genuinely happy for her future. My speech at the reception came from the heart. Marcus squeezed my hand when I returned to our table. The distance between us proved challenging but manageable. We scheduled regular video calls and weekend visits. The space allowed continued personal growth for both of us. I rediscovered my love of painting during quiet evenings alone. Thanksgiving meant hosting dinner at my apartment. My family praised my cooking and decorating efforts. Nobody mentioned my obvious personal transformation. They simply enjoyed the confident woman I'd become. December brought heavy snow and holiday preparations. I volunteered at a local shelter on weekends. The perspective gained from helping others deepened my gratitude. Marcus flew in for Christmas despite the travel chaos. 1 year had passed since Blake's text message. I realized I hadn't thought of him in months. His power over my emotions had completely disappeared. My life had filled with meaningful relationships and pursuits. New Year's Eve found us at a quiet dinner rather than parties. Marcus seemed nervous throughout the appetizer course. He reached for my hand as dessert arrived. The ring box appeared without grand gestures or public displays. His proposal acknowledged our separate strengths and mutual respect. I said yes without hesitation or doubt, and we celebrated privately with champagne and promises. The engagement felt right despite our geographical challenge. We agreed on a long engagement while figuring out logistics. Neither of us wanted to sacrifice hard-won career advances. The compromise felt healthy rather than resentful. So Cherry screamed with excitement at my news. Our friends organized an impromptu celebration dinner. My parents expressed genuine happiness for my choice. Marcus's family sent flowers and warm welcome messages. Winter passed in a blur of future planning. We investigated cities that offered opportunities for both careers. Weekend visits became house hunting expeditions. Our discussions about finances remained honest and open. I received another promotion that spring, and the new position allowed remote work possibilities. The timing seemed almost too perfect to believe. Marcus supported my success without insecurity. We found a house halfway between our ideal job locations. The compromise required reasonable commutes for both of us. The mortgage approval process tested our patience. We celebrated the closing with takeout on the empty floor. Moving day arrived with both sets of parents helping. Our furniture combinations required creative arrangements. The first night in our new home felt surreal. We slept on a mattress before bedroom furniture arrived. Setting up our shared space taught us new things about each other. His book collection dwarfed my own impressively, and my kitchen organizational system bewildered him completely. We laughed through the minor conflicts of cohabitation. Summer brought wedding planning and yard work. We planted trees that would take years to mature. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. Our relationship had deep roots and room for growth. The wedding date was set for the following spring. We chose a small venue with space for only close friends. Neither of us wanted extravagance or show, while the decisions came easily with clear communication. Fall meant settling into work routines and community. We joined a neighborhood association and local gym. Weekend home improvement projects became our hobby. Dinner parties introduced us to potential new friends. Winter holidays in our home created new traditions. We hosted both families for a chaotic, wonderful weekend. The house felt truly ours after that gathering. We entered the new year with contentment and purpose. Wedding preparations accelerated after January. Cherry helped me find a dress that felt authentically me. Marcus and I wrote personal vows over weekend mornings. The guest list remained small despite family pressures. Spring arrived right on schedule for our April ceremony. The weather cooperated with sunshine and mild temperatures. I felt completely calm walking down the aisle. Marcus's face showed everything I needed to see. The reception lasted late into the evening. Our first dance was to a song we both genuinely loved. Speeches from friends highlighted our individual journeys. We left for a honeymoon that balanced adventure and relaxation. Marriage felt like an extension of what we'd built. Our daily routines adjusted to accommodate each other. We maintained individual interests and friends. The balance came more naturally than I'd expected. Summer brought a job offer I hadn't sought. The position combined my skills with greater impact. The salary increase meant financial security for our future. Marcus supported the change despite its challenges. We celebrated our first anniversary with simple gifts. The paper tradition inspired thoughtful letters from both of us. I reread mine whenever doubts crept into my mind. His words reflected the person I'd become rather than who I was. The second year of marriage brought unexpected news. The pregnancy test showed positive on a random Tuesday. We sat in stunned silence before breaking into laughter. Neither of us had planned this particular timing. The months that followed tested my hard-won strength. Morning sickness didn't respect work schedules or meetings. My body changed in ways I couldn't control. Marcus's steady support never wavered once. Cherry threw a baby shower that avoided tacky games. Friends gave practical gifts and genuine advice. My mother stayed for 2 weeks after the birth. Her help proved essential during those early days. Our daughter arrived after 18 hours of labor. Her tiny features combined the best of both of us. The love I felt defied any previous emotional experience. Sleepless nights tested our communication and patience. The first months passed in a blur of diapers and feedings. We traded night shifts and encouraged short breaks. Our partnership strengthened through the shared challenge, and my maternity leave ended with mixed emotions. The daycare we chose eased my working mother guilt. My boss accommodated flexible hours when possible. Marcus adjusted his schedule to share parenting equally. Our daughter's first birthday arrived unbelievably quickly. The small celebration included both sets of grandparents. We took too many pictures of cake-covered smiles. The tiny milestones had become our greatest joys. Life settled into a new normal of work and family. Career opportunities continued for both of us. We made decisions based on family impact first. Financial planning focused on education and security. And one random Tuesday, an email notification appeared. Blake's name in my inbox surprised me completely. I almost deleted it without reading the contents. Curiosity won over immediate dismissal. His message expressed genuine regret and personal growth. He mentioned therapy and sobriety with humble language. No requests or expectations accompanied his apology. I sat with the message for several days before responding. My reply was brief but honest about my current happiness. I wished him well in his continued journey. The exchange brought unexpected closure to that chapter. Years have passed since that final communication, and our daughter now has a younger brother. My career has evolved in satisfying ways. Marcus and I have weathered normal marital challenges. I sometimes reflect on the journey that brought me here. The person I was seems like someone I once knew. The lessons learned shaped everything that followed. An underestimation became the foundation for my strength. Cherry remains my closest friend through life changes. We laugh about our younger selves with affection. Our children play together during weekend gatherings. Our husbands have formed their own solid friendship. I mentor young women starting their careers now. I share lessons about boundaries and self-respect. They listen more carefully when I reveal my history. The story resonates with too many of them, unfortunately. My parents have aged into doting grandparents. They express pride in the family we've created. My sister and I maintain our rekindled closeness. Family gatherings feel genuinely joyful rather than obligatory. The journey continues with normal ups and downs. Some days feel overwhelming with responsibilities, and other moments bring unexpected perfect joy. The foundation built on self-respect remains solid. I no longer fear being alone or making mistakes. My worth doesn't depend on others' validation. The journey taught me to trust my own instincts. Underestimation became my unexpected gift in disguise. And life writes chapters we never anticipate. The characters enter and exit without our permission. The plot twists challenge our character development. The ending remains unwritten even as pages turn. I underestimated myself for far too long, and that limitation nearly became my permanent story. Breaking free required recognizing my own strength, and the recognition changed everything that followed after. My salvation came through my own determination, and external circumstances facilitated but didn't create change. The resilience existed within me all along. I simply needed courage to access its power. The journey from then to now wasn't always smooth. Setbacks and doubts appeared at unexpected moments, and forward progress sometimes required backward steps. The direction mattered more than perfect advancement, and I sometimes wonder about parallel universe versions. The woman who never left Blake's controlling influence, the career that stagnated under self-doubt's weight, the joy never discovered through fear of risk. But this reality holds everything I never knew to want. A partnership based on mutual respect and growth. Children who know their mother's authentic strength. A career built on competence rather than competition. Cherry raises her glass to me at family gatherings. Her knowing smile acknowledges our shared history. We've both come so far from those uncertain days. The underestimation that once limited now empowers us. I kiss my husband with genuine appreciation, and I hug my children with unconditional love. I approach my work with well-earned confidence. I live each day fully present and authentically me. I never thought I'd be this person. Not after everything. My 20s were a mess of self-doubt and imposter syndrome. Those early professional years felt like walking on ice. I remember crying in bathroom stalls between meetings. I remember rehearsing simple statements for hours. I remember watching cherry command rooms with apparent effortlessness. Now I understand there's nothing effortless about it. It's all hard work and practice and failing privately 1,000 times. I take another sip of wine and watch my children playing in the yard. The autumn leaves create perfect crunching sounds beneath their feet. My son throws himself into a pile with absolute abandon. My daughter meticulously collects the most colorful specimens. Two completely different approaches to the same joy. I check my phone briefly, confirming tomorrow's presentation is still ready. The quarterly numbers exceeded projections by 18%. My team deserves this win, and I worked hard for this win. No more qualifying my successes or attributing them to luck. The promotion came through last Tuesday. I didn't tell anyone for 2 full days. I wanted to sit with the achievement privately first. The title of senior vice president still feels strange on my tongue. My email signature looked foreign when I updated it. My husband found the offer letter on my desk that evening. He bought champagne without me asking. He knew celebration was warranted even when I hesitated. Old habits die slowly, those patterns of minimizing myself. Cherry calls it the shrinking disease we were raised with. The backyard erupts with squeals as the sprinkler unexpectedly turns on. My husband appears from around the corner with a mischievous grin. Water soaks through the children's sweaters instantly. They run in chaotic circles through the spray. I set my wine down on the patio table. I kick off my slippers without thinking. I run straight into the water with them. The cold hits like a shock, and my sweater is soaked within seconds. My son tackles me onto the wet grass. We roll like we did when he was tiny. My daughter jumps on top of our pile. My husband joins last, completing our tangle of limbs. I laugh until my stomach hurts. Water drips from my hair into my eyes. We stay there until our fingers wrinkle. The sun begins to set behind our fence. I make everyone strip on the porch before entering. The wet clothes make a soggy pile by the door. I grab towels from the downstairs bathroom, and we dry off amid giggles and shivers. I make hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. The kids leave melted marshmallow mustaches on their faces. My husband wipes mine away with his thumb. I check my phone again out of habit. 3 emails from work need responses, and I put the phone away instead. Work can wait until morning, and this moment cannot. My daughter asks about my childhood memories of fall. I tell her about jumping in leaves at my grandmother's house. I omit the parts about grandmother's criticism of dirty clothes. Some family traditions don't need continuation. My son wants to know if I was brave as a child. I tell him about climbing the tallest tree in our neighborhood. I don't mention falling and breaking my arm. He needs the version where courage wins. My husband squeezes my hand under the table. He knows all my real stories, and he loves me through all the versions. The children go upstairs to shower before bed. I hear their footsteps thumping overhead. Water pipes creak in the walls of our aging home. My husband loads the dishwasher while I wipe counters. We move around each other in practiced choreography. 15 years creates its own language of domestic cooperation. I think about my first apartment after college, the roaches that scattered when lights flicked on, the mattress on the floor without a frame, the single pot I used for everything. The climb feels both longer and shorter than it actually was. I hear the water shut off upstairs, and small feet pad down the hallway. I head up for story time and tucking in. My daughter wants the book about the girl scientist. My son wants the one with dragons. And I read both, doing all the voices. My throat feels scratchy by the end, and I kiss foreheads and check nightlights. I turn on sound machines and adjust blankets. I whisper brave dreams into each small ear. I close doors halfway, never completely. Back downstairs, my husband has poured more wine. We sit on the couch with our feet touching. We talk about weekend plans and school projects. We compare calendar notifications on our phones. We remember to schedule that plumber for the dripping faucet. The mundane details feel like unexpected gifts. And I think about tomorrow's presentation again briefly. The slides are good, and the data is better. My points are clear and actionable. I've prepared thoroughly as always. The difference now is confidence rather than fear. I no longer rehearse until my voice gives out. I no longer imagine worst-case scenarios on loop. I trust my knowledge and my right to take up space. Cherry taught me that, though neither of us knew it then. My phone buzzes with her text asking about next weekend's dinner. I respond with a quick confirmation and smiling emoji. Our friendship evolved in surprising ways after competition faded. She became my greatest champion in executive meetings. I became her honest sounding board during her divorce. We share a knowing look when male colleagues repeat our ideas. We recommend each other for opportunities without hesitation. The wine bottle empties between us as my husband and I talk. The house creaks and settles around our conversation. I feel contentment spreading through my chest like warmth. This moment feels both ordinary and precious. The person I was 15 years ago would never believe this piece. I check the doors and windows before heading upstairs. I adjust the thermostat to night settings. I turn off all but safety lights. My husband showers while I remove makeup at the sink. I apply serums and creams methodically. I brush my teeth while mentally reviewing tomorrow's schedule. The bedsheets feel cool against my legs, and I set my alarm for 5:30. I'll run 4 miles before the house wakes up. I need that time alone with my thoughts before the day begins. My husband's breathing slows beside me, and his arm drapes heavily across my waist. I close my eyes and practice gratitude silently, for this home, and for healthy children, for work that matters, and for the journey that brought me here. Morning arrives with insistent beeping from my phone. I silence it quickly to avoid waking anyone. The house is dark and quiet at this hour. I dress in running clothes laid out the night before. I lace my shoes in the hallway by nightlight. I stretch briefly in the kitchen while drinking water. The front door opens to crisp morning air. My breath forms small clouds with each exhale. My watch beeps to signal GPS connection, and I begin slowly down our street. The neighborhood sleeps around me except for newspaper delivery. The rhythm of my footfalls becomes meditative quickly. I increase pace after the first mile. My thoughts organize themselves with each step forward. The presentation, and the school bake sale, the team performance reviews, and the vacation planning. morning. Each concern sorts itself into manageable pieces. I round the final corner toward home as sunrise begins. Sweat cools quickly in the autumn air, and I feel simultaneously depleted and energized. I stretch on the front porch before entering. The house remains quiet but begins stirring, and the coffee maker gurgles its automatic brewing. I shower quickly, washing away salt and fatigue. I dress in the outfit planned Sunday evening, the navy suit with subtle pinstripes, and the blouse with just enough detail. Jewelry minimal but intentional, and shoes comfortable enough for all-day confidence. I apply makeup with practiced efficiency. I style my hair into a smooth, professional knot. I hear children's footsteps and morning complaints. I finish getting ready as chaos erupts downstairs. I find my husband making peanut butter toast for everyone. I pour coffee into my travel mug gratefully. I check backpacks for permission slips and homework. I sign a last-minute school form with barely concealed annoyance. The morning rushes forward in its usual frantic pace. Teeth get brushed, and hair gets combed. Shoes get located under furniture. We pile into separate cars with kisses and reminders. I drop the children at school with quick goodbyes. I navigate morning traffic toward downtown. I rehearse key points while changing lanes. I arrive at the office 40 minutes early intentionally. The quiet floor allows uninterrupted preparation time. I review my presentation once more for clarity. I check email and respond to urgent messages. My team arrives in staggered intervals before 9. They bring nervous energy and coffee refills. I reassure them with confident smiles and clear direction. The conference room fills with executives by 9:30. The CEO nods in my direction with expectation. I stand without hesitation when introduced, and I present our findings with measured authority. I answer questions directly without qualification, and I acknowledge team contributions appropriately. I make recommendations backed by solid data. The room responds with engaged questions and notes. The CEO interrupts with praise halfway through, and the presentation concludes with clear action items. I feel satisfaction rather than relief when sitting down. My team sends congratulatory texts under the table. The meeting adjourns with handshakes and follow-ups scheduled. Cherry catches my eye across the room with a thumbs up. We've come so far from competing for scraps of recognition. She follows me back to my office afterward. She closes the door for a moment of private celebration. We laugh about the CFO's surprised expression at the numbers. We make plans for drinks next week regardless of outcomes. The rest of the day passes in meetings and decisions. I make time for lunch despite the schedule. I call my husband between appointments for connection. I mentor a junior team member for 30 essential minutes. I leave the office at a reasonable hour without apology. Traffic moves surprisingly well on the drive home. I listen to a podcast about leadership psychology. I arrive home before dinner preparations have begun. The children greet me with stories and complaints. I change clothes before helping with homework problems. My husband and I prepare dinner side by side. We eat together at the table without phones present. We discuss days and plans and weekend possibilities. The children clear dishes with minimal reminding, and the evening unfolds in familiar, comfortable patterns. I fold laundry while watching my daughter practice piano. I help my son with his science project about rocks. I review emails briefly while they shower. I read more stories and tuck in more blankets. I kiss more foreheads and whisper more brave dreams. The house quiets again as children surrender to sleep. I pour a small glass of wine from yesterday's bottle. My husband and I sit on the porch despite the chill. We talk about retirement dreams still decades away. We discuss the promotion and what it means practically. We recognize the privilege and responsibility it carries. We acknowledge the hard work that made it possible. My phone buzzes with congratulatory messages from colleagues. News travels fast throughout company channels, and I respond with appropriate gratitude and humility. I set the phone aside to remain present on the porch. The neighborhood settles into evening stillness around us. Lights turn off in windows across the street. My thoughts drift to tomorrow's challenges briefly, and I redirect to this moment intentionally. The wind chimes sing softly from the corner post. My husband's hand finds mine in comfortable silence. We head inside when the temperature drops further. We lock doors and turn off lights like always. We brush teeth and apply night creams, and we set alarms and plug in devices. We slide under covers with synchronized sighs. Tomorrow will bring its own demands and victories. Tonight requires only rest and gratitude. I think about that younger version of myself briefly, the one who cried in bathroom stalls between meetings, the one who rehearsed simple statements for hours, the one who watched Cherry with envy and inadequacy. I wish I could tell her about this future, about this peace and confidence and belonging, and about the path that seemed impossible then, about the strength she already possessed without knowing. Sleep comes easily with that thought. So morning follows with predictable reliability. Different day, similar routines with variations, and running and showering and dressing professionally, children and backpacks and permission slips signed, and traffic and emails and meetings scheduled carefully. This particular day includes lunch with the CEO. The invitation arrived after yesterday's presentation success. We discuss expansion possibilities over salads and sparkling water. He mentions future director board openings meaningfully, and I express appropriate interest without desperate eagerness. The conversation flows naturally between business and appropriate personal. I return to the office with new possibilities forming. The afternoon includes performance reviews for 2 team members. I deliver feedback with honesty and compassion, and I acknowledge strengths specifically and actionably. I address development areas with clear expectations. I remember my own reviews from years earlier, the vague criticisms that left me confused, and the biased language that undermined confidence subtly, the moving targets that seemed designed for failure. I promised myself to manage differently when given chance. The team members leave with clear understanding and motivation. I complete paperwork and documentation thoroughly afterward, and Cherry stops by with acquisition proposal questions. We troubleshoot potential roadblocks together efficiently. We strategize approaches for the board meeting next week. Our collaboration feels natural and mutually beneficial, and the competitive tension evaporated years ago somehow. The afternoon passes in focused work and decisions. I leave slightly later than planned, but still reasonable. The traffic moves slowly due to construction delays. I call my mother while waiting through 3 light cycles. We chat about her garden club and neighborhood gossip. She asks about the children and weekend plans. She mentions Dad's doctor appointment with forced casualness. I make mental note to follow up more specifically later. I arrive home to homework already completed surprisingly. My husband has started dinner preparations early. The children play in the backyard with neighbor friends. I change clothes and join cooking efforts gratefully. Dinner happens with stories and laughter around the table. Evening unfolds in its comfortable, slightly chaotic pattern. Showers and stories and bedtime routines, and quiet conversations and wine after children sleep. Planning and connecting and being together presently. And this particular evening includes vacation research online. We compare options for summer trips thoughtfully. We consider budgets and interests and logistics realistically. We bookmark possibilities for further investigation later. Friday arrives with casual dress code and lighter spirits. The office buzzes with weekend anticipation already, and I complete pending tasks with focused attention. I delegate appropriately for my absence Monday. I confirm details for the client dinner next Wednesday. I clear my desk completely before leaving early. The weekend opens up with promised family time. We visit the Children's Museum downtown Saturday morning. We explore interactive exhibits with enthusiastic energy. We eat overpriced lunch in the museum cafe without complaint. We purchase small souvenirs from the gift shop. The afternoon includes grocery shopping and house cleaning. Everyone participates with varying levels of enthusiasm. The evening brings homemade pizza and board games. Competitive spirits emerge around Monopoly predictably. Sunday includes pancakes and church and lazy reading. We prepare for the week ahead with gentle productivity. Laundry completes in cycles throughout the day, and backpacks get organized for Monday morning. Meetings get reviewed and mentally rehearsed briefly, and family dinner happens with grandparents visiting happily. The children perform piano pieces with nervous pride. We eat dessert and share stories from different generations. The weekend closes with gratitude and preparation. Monday morning begins another cycle of living fully. Different meetings, different challenges, similar purpose. The rhythm of work and family continues its dance. I approach each day with that hard-won confidence. The confidence built through failure and persistence. And the confidence earned through competence and courage. The confidence Cherry and I both found eventually. Sometimes during quiet moments, I still marvel at this life, at the journey from that uncertain young woman, at the growth that happened through difficulty, and at the joy discovered in ordinary moments, at the strength revealed through challenge, and at the authenticity developed through experience. I never think I made it, as if reaching destination. Instead, I recognize I am making it, continuously. Each day bringing new lessons and opportunities, and each challenge revealing more capacity than expected. Each joy affirming choices made along the way. I watch my children developing their own confidence. I see them try and fail and try again naturally. I guide them through disappointments and celebrations. I hope they begin their journeys with advantages I lacked, with belief in their worthiness and capabilities inherently, with understanding that their voices deserve to be heard, with knowledge that their contributions have value automatically. The lessons Cherry and I learned through difficulty. We compare notes on this occasionally over lunch. How different our children's starting points seem, how fiercely we protect their sense of possibility, how carefully we model resilience and self-advocacy, and how intentionally we demonstrate healthy ambition. The world hasn't changed completely, we recognize realistically. Our daughters will face challenges our sons won't encounter. Our children of color will navigate additional complexities. The playing field remains uneven in many significant ways, but something has shifted through our generation's efforts. Something has opened through our refusal to remain small. Something has begun through our insistence on authenticity. Something continues through our mentorship of younger women. I notice it during meetings when young women speak confidently. I observe it when they claim credit without hesitation. I celebrate it when they negotiate without apology. I recognize the progress without ignoring remaining barriers. Each school concert reminds me of this journey somehow. Watching children perform with varying confidence levels, and seeing some shrink from attention instinctively. Seeing others step forward with natural assurance. Understanding how these patterns begin so early unconsciously. How girls learn to take up less space gradually. How boys learn to claim attention automatically. How these subtle lessons shape future boardrooms eventually. I clap especially loud for the hesitant performers. I make eye contact with encouragement intentionally, and I comment specifically on courage afterward deliberately. These small moments matter in foundation building importantly. The world opens or closes through such interactions accumulatively. My career continues advancing through consistent effort, and the board position materializes through dedicated preparation. The leadership opportunities expand through demonstrated competence, and the influence grows through authentic relationship building. I no longer question my belonging in these spaces. I no longer justify my presence apologetically, and I no longer minimize achievements habitually. I occupy my position with appropriate confidence finally. Cherry does the same in her organization admirably. We compare notes over occasional dinner meetings, and we laugh about imposter syndrome's lingering whispers. We strategize approaches to particularly challenging situations, and we celebrate victories without qualification or diminishment. We acknowledge setbacks without personalizing excessively, and we've learned to fail forward productively together. The lessons continue with each new challenge faced. The growth happens through discomfort embraced willingly, and the confidence builds through experience accumulated gradually. The authenticity develops through self-knowledge pursued intentionally. My children watch this modeling without fully understanding yet. They absorb the lessons through observation unconsciously. They inherit possibilities we fought to create purposefully. They begin their journeys from different starting points thankfully. I kiss my husband each morning with genuine appreciation. I hug my children with fierce, unconditional love daily. I approach my colleagues with respectful, collaborative spirit. I face challenges with hard-earned resilience consistently. And I celebrate joys without diminishment or qualification. I live each moment with increasing present awareness. The journey continues with each choice made consciously. The story unfolds with each challenge met courageously. The legacy builds with each authentic interaction completed. I am still becoming the person I was meant to be. Still still discovering capacities previously unknown within myself, and still growing through difficulties faced honestly, still learning through connections made vulnerably, and still contributing through work done excellently, still loving through presence offered genuinely, and still living through choices made intentionally. The process never completes itself fully or finally. It continues with each sunrise and new opportunity.